Life is good for the Commanders. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media. That's Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I'll get to all this in a minute about this. I have a story up on Terry McLaurin right now because that's why life is good for the Commanders. But don't forget, first of all, that the Keim Report is presented by AAA. And don't forget, you can get this shirt from chubbyshorts.com. You get $10 off when you go there and use the password Keim. So chubbyshorts.com/Keim. Do me a favor, you go there, support the show, get $10 off, get that crazy shirt, and look like a Commanders fanatic. And I mean crazy in a good way. This is a shirt my guy Rick Snyder would have loved. Maybe not for him, but for somebody else because he liked some louder shirts sometimes. And there you go. All right, folks. So, like I said, life is good for the Commanders because Terry McLaurin was back out on the practice field. So too was Noah Brown. I'll get to him in a minute, but let's start with Terry McLaurin because the day belonged to him. All smiles out there today, folks. So a lot of hugs. We saw the hugs on video between he and Adam Peters. Two sides that were supposedly, first of all, for Adam Peters, it never got to the point where he was mad at Terry McLaurin. And, one thing that Terry McLaurin talked about, they both talked about how many conversations they had over the last few weeks. It's one of the reasons why it's for holding in versus holding out. If you're holding in, you're going to be around these people. You're going to have conversations with them. And I think in this situation, it definitely helps because they were able to maintain their professionalism. They could talk and visit and explain, like Terry McLaurin could say, this is why I would like this. And Peters could say, well, this is how we see it. And what you try to do is strip the emotion away, which is very difficult when you're on the other end of it. It's easy to strip it away if you're trying to give the money versus trying to get the money. So, anyways, I think the way they both handled it, as McLaurin told us after practice, that both sides wanted to get this done. This was something I always told you, like both sides want to be in business together. And usually when you have them, you have a resolution that keeps the player here. So I want to get into the terms of the contract because I do think it's important, but I also want to talk about how it was handled and what it means going forward. I think from Peters' end, I think it shows like they feel really good about the prices they set for their players because in the end, this deal is really like I talked to after the terms were announced at 3 years up to 96, et cetera. I had multiple agents say like they did not like say they're like when this comes out, it's going to be a more team friendly deal rather than winning the headline, which is what happened the other day. And in the end, it is a team friendly deal. But what I do know is Terry McLaurin was happy, and a happy Terry is a happy life. So that's what they needed to see here. You wanted to see McLaurin happy because if he likes this deal, then it's a good deal. That's what matters. Like people shoot for the moon all the time, but can you be happy with where it gets to? I also think when you look at this, it certainly feels like had there been more motivation early on both sides, this could have gotten done a while ago because it's really kind of in the ballpark of where you thought it would get to for sure. So, but it didn't. It's done now. There's time to go, and they can get this. They can get ready for the start of the season. But again, the other thing I think it shows is, Peters. I had someone tell me like he's a stubborn guy. He's like, I mean that in a good way. Like if he has the idea of what this is going to be, like he's going to stick to it. If he's believes like, hey, we're not going to set a precedent for this. We're not going to worry about what happened under the Dan Snyder era because they weren't here. They had nothing to do with that. And in fact, it's better because they are here. So that's one thing. But it also is with the owner, Josh Harris, how the whole group handled it. Because from this was never just Adam Peters' decision. Like he is the point man, but he has people working for him who come up with the numbers. Brandon Sosna, Rob Rogers, like they're the guys who do a lot, whether it's with the analytics and then the contract itself, analyzing the market, seeing what others get paid, et cetera. They're the ones who help come up with that. Then you have the owner who demands all this information from Harris, but who is very supportive of Josh Harris, did not overstep his involvement or push somebody aside or demand like just get it done today, and then you end up overpaying a guy, which then sets a bad precedent. So I think the way they handled it was a very good way, and I think the way Dan Quinn handled it by letting those guys handle the situation and not trying to force his like, hey, I need this guy out here, that kind of stuff. Everybody knew Terry's importance. So, and I think for McLaurin's them getting in here and being around the team, I think probably helps because he even talked about today after practice about being at that scrimmage and how ready he was to basically just jump in there. And because he is a competitor and guys want to be on the field, like you only get so many years playing this league. You don't want to give any of it up. And he's a guy has a lot of passion for this sport. It's why he's beloved. Um, so when you're watching the scrimmage and you can't participate, you're going to feel it. So you see that enough, like it's going to start to maybe erode the desire to be at a certain point and get you down to where now like let's go. And I think, and I don't I this is me speculating more so than anything else, but I think all that stuff can play a role in helping to get something like this done for sure. Now, let's take a look at the numbers because it's essentially like a 2-year deal where basically you have options in 27 and 28. So really, after 26, he could be cut and they could save 16 million on the salary cap. They've got 18 in dead cap money, but it can happen. So this doesn't guarantee anything beyond 2026. Like it's 44.65 million guaranteed. So, it's again, we're really looking at a couple year deal here. Um, so, there's a lot of incentives to get there, like to get the number up. And a lot of the incentives are tied to his production and then the team's success. So if he catches more than 83 passes and then they win, they make the playoffs, he's going to get bumps in each of those years. So there is incentives. If he continues to play well, then he'll be fine. So, but when you get to that third year of the deal, we'll see what happens because that's when the numbers kind of go up a little bit. I want to check the third year of that deal. It is third year. What did I have it at? It's a $25.65 million base, 23.3 million in 2027. So like some of that stuff could get worked out differently. I don't know that you get to that third year and that's the base you're going to get, maybe, but here's where it gets it not interesting, but the reason why I always felt like it was good for McLaurin to stay here, one, he's beloved. He means a lot here. We all know that. Two, he's in a really good situation. Like you have a good play caller, a good staff around them, and you have a quarterback. And so if you want to put up numbers, this is a good place to be. Like you know what it's like when you don't have that. Now, funny thing is, like last year, his numbers overall were comparable to the rest of his career outside of the touchdowns. Everything else, the catches and the yards were comparable. The yards per game, comparable. Now he did it in fewer targets, which was different, and that goes to the quarterback, not just looking for one guy. And listen, you can't argue with success. The offense was really good, but and having more around him and not having to be reliant just like they won games last year where Terry had two catches for 19 yards. I think he may have a touchdown in those games, but they won those games. Like you really wouldn't see that before. But they did. So um, it's a good thing. Like I said, the contract, the headline is one thing, but the reality of it was another. But in the end, how much do you really care? Like, I think it matters from a organizational standpoint, and it matters because of salary cap. It matters because of how you're going to approach deals in the future. And I think that's the lesson to learn is how they handled it more so than just the money. I think it's all important because again, it goes back to precedent. It goes back to all that. It goes salary cap. They're not going to they're not going to just because they did something like this, Terry McLaurin, they're not doing this with Jane Downs. Jane Downs is going to be a different situation. Like he's going to get a huge number, and you're not going to come down to the wire with him. You're just not. But in this situation, again, McLaurin is happy, and he made that clear. Like he felt really good about the deal, And that is what matters most because when that guy is feeling good, that was always my concern. Like you didn't want this hanging over your head going into the season because then how is he going to handle that? He's a passionate guy. He's a true pro. Like I don't doubt for a minute that he would play a certain way, but is it going to eat at you? Like, and it would just be natural if it does. But the other thing too that I always thought, and this is what talking to people with the team, um, that would he be willing to risk the injury and all that, and for what? How much more would you really get? When guys know what their value is outside here, like they'll push harder. And if they feel like the team, like for example, would if the team if they felt like okay, just play it out, they'll put the salary cap on you. I think he would have played it out because then you possibly could get 30.4 million. But I don't think the team would have done that. Like they're not willing to go, they weren't willing to go up there right now. Why would they do it next year in the offseason? Like, so I think if they had known that, now you're starting at that number, and if because it clearly you can read it as the team would not have done that. And I don't think they would have done that. So anyways, it's why this is good. It's resolved now, and now everybody can move forward. But again, happy Terry, happy life for the Commanders. And that's a very good thing because we know the value of what he means in the field. It's why, as Adam Peters said and Terry McLaurin both talked about, how the other players reacted to the news. And they heard all this, like Peter said, they heard all this commotion outside the office. And what it was, with the day it was announced, and McLaurin is in the weight room. It's like all these people, all these players keep coming up to him. Like he said, like 30 players were coming up to him. They coming from the cafeteria, coming in the weight room, coming from the trainer's room, all going to see him because it mattered to them. This is also the one thing that was hanging over the franchise. Like to me, there's a different feel now. That could just be from a media standpoint that you feel like, oh, now it's different. Well, it is different because McLaurin's out there. Now you look at this team like, okay, now you're ready to roll, right? Now you're ready to get back to where we were until this was resolved. And again, like the lean was always that it was going to get resolved because it logically made sense. It didn't make sense for it not to be resolved. And so logically it made sense to do that and to get it done before the season. And as deadline spur actions is what Peter said, which is the famous phrase. And that's what happened in this case. Like it wasn't because they freed up more money because Brian Robinson got traded. It wasn't because anything else other than, hey, the season is starting. We need to get him on the field. Like, here's the offer. Take it, go, whatever. And he was on the field. So it's all good because of that. Ultimately, that is what matters most. And if he's happy with them, then that's again, I will say it again, and probably for the 10th time, that it is that's what matters. And he was his old self out there. Like when you're watching him out there, I think some people just like to be on the field practicing. He's one of them. Jane Daniels one of them. Like they belong on practice fields or football fields just because that's where they love to be. And like you watch McLaurin in warmups, and he's getting praise from the coaches, telling him like, way to stick it, way to stick it. That's, great job, Terry, right? Like little things like that. Like that's where he belongs. And that's what we saw today is him doing that, breaking down the huddle with the receivers group, 1, 2, 3 offense, right? Like that's what he does. He brings that to the room. But there's a reason why players reacted that way. And even like, Bobby Wagner, how happy he was for him afterwards, talking about that, and just Tyler Biadasz talking about like, yeah, he's a dynamic player. He does this, but it's the leader of the group. Like that's what it is. And it's funny because when you're in the locker room, like you see more guys maybe mingling throughout all over the place. Terry tends to stay at his locker, but guys will come up to him. Like it's not like he's not like he's not social with everybody, but like some guys, Jaden wanders all over the place. Bobby Wagner wanders all over the place. Jeremy Reeves wanders all over the place. Terry stays around his locker, but he talks to guys in his locker all the time, whether it was, KJ Osborne, Mike Samuel, those guys last year. But he's highly, highly respected because of the work he does, because of the production he's had and what he means to here. And I think like McLaurin even said, like his trade request, he said he wasn't bluffing. He wasn't trying to gain leverage. Although I will say the team anticipated that move. But what we also know is, and he even said, this is where I want to be because I love it here. And he loves the fan base. He loves being part of this. And now plays right, he'll be here for a few more years as long as he keeps producing. Because again, 2027, it could change after next year. So this could be only 2 more years from here, or it could be a couple more after that, depending on how things go. But then on the field, there's the obvious impact. And we've talked about this, like Bram has talked about this a lot, like the energy in practice, the vibe, was it off? Or I don't want to say vibe, but the energy. Well, the defense provided energy. The defense isn't sitting there saying, "Oh my God, Terry's not here. We can't play." They were providing energy. The difference is, like, the offense wasn't able to always counterpunch as much as what you've seen in the past. It was not a balanced summer for that. And part of that is no Terry McLaurin. He makes a difference. Like, you want the downfield shots. That's where you get energy. You complete a couple of those every practice, you're going to have some energy. You complete a couple of throws in the red zone, you're going to have more energy. That's what he does, both those areas. So when he's out there today, like, it felt different because they felt more whole. Now you got Terry going downfield, you got Debo underneath breaking tackles, you got Zach Ertz over the middle, and you had Noah Brown back out there too. Now, durability is the key for him. He's got to be able to stay on the field. But seeing him out there, he has looked good running his routes. Like, you get like I always we know Terry's better, but I always pair those two to a degree as far as like what have they been missing, because Noah Brown was a big play guy for them as well. Like, he what 35 catches, was on his way to a career high, but also or drew 6 pass interference penalties, only 2 behind league leader Justin Jefferson. Like, he makes plays as well. So you put those three together with Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler and whatever else they're going to do, now you have something more. So like now you can feel like, okay, if you're Cliff Kingsbury, okay, let's go. And I think the other thing for Terry too, that was key, as he pointed out, this is the first time in his career he's going to have the same starting quarterback in consecutive years. And he's in the same offense. He's like, you think that might help? Like, of course it will. So, and he even said that, like, he told Jane Dams, it's just like riding a bike when he were out there catching balls over his shoulder, whatever, all that stuff. So, good for there. Now, for today in practice, a couple things we saw, like, went through individual drills. When they do one warm-up drill where they have like they'll have like 5 receivers out there, right? So you have or 4 receivers out there, and they all run down. They have all 4 quarterbacks throwing to them at the same time. So each quarterback has a receiver they're throwing to on that particular route, and they run a route and they throw it. Well, you do, everybody goes, then you run down the other side of the field, and everybody goes back. Well, Terry did that once, and then the next 3 times did not. So that, to me, is part of the quote unquote ramping up period. And they want to take it very slow with him in that regard. Like, don't overdo it right away. So, because you are going hard. But the 4 reps we saw that he took one, but he did do some 11 on 11 work too. So that's good news for Washington too. But so all right. Yeah, I think like I said, it was good to see Noah Brown out there. And I think the other thing too that, we talked to Dan Quinn and Evan Peters about things about this, and Quinn talked about just how rare a competitor Terry is and how much he loves coaching them. The one thing that was true the whole time is they were very clear on how badly they wanted McLaurin here, and how much they liked coaching him. Like, I'll tell you what, like, if they didn't like him, they don't have to do this just because his contract is up after the year, and they would have been content for another guy just letting it ride, because we've seen that, right? But they didn't want to do that here because they did want him here. So, but they weren't going to go like for everybody just like, oh, just pay him, give him what he wants. That's not how it works. Like, if you start doing just give what you only give whatever anybody wants, you're going to be in a bad spot with your contracts. So they got a good deal. Terry got, he's getting 44.65 million guaranteed. He's got $30 million signing bonus. That's part of the guarantee. It's not in addition to, it's part of. And then you have also these incentives, and the incentives are tied to production and they're tied to team success. So that's good for him if you can reach those as well. So, um, and like I said, Peter's kind of, I mean, this is a guy that he always wanted, and it wasn't just him; it was a team of people. And if they didn't like him, they would just let it play out. And again, I don't think it would have ended up with a franchise tag. I think it would have ended up with him testing the market. And I think that's a big reason why he probably ended up signing because you knew, like, do you really want to go do that? For sure. So, anyways, so one or two more things. I had practice squad stuff. So they signed, I think it's 15 guys today, three more receivers. So one of the things I thought like they did sign a running back. I told you like they were looking for a running back. So they signed Donovan Edwards on what's tonight, Wednesday night, but they also had three receivers that they brought back and Ja'Cory Brooks, Chris Moore, and Jacoby Jones. So two kids, they two, a couple young guys and then a veteran, because they only have five on the active roster, so you need to have some guys. I don't, Moore has experience. Brooks is the guy that was intriguing, and we'll see where that goes. But anyways, they didn't claim anybody off waivers, so what, right now, Ali Cahoe is still on the roster, linebacker. But we'll see how the composition changes. Do they add anybody over the weekend? Whatever. So, because again, like it's really about next week. They do have one more practice on Thursday, so it's another chance for Terry McLaurin to get out there, Noah Brown to get out there, and then we'll see where this goes. Anyway, folks, that's it for me, and I do appreciate everybody who has offered their condolences on Rick. It's really just hard for me to talk about it a lot right now. I do want to spend a few minutes in the next several days talking about it, but I do appreciate the condolences. Rick was a great guy, and I miss him very, very much. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back with another episode coming out Friday morning, so I will